SpaceX has successfully launched and landed its Starship rocket for the first time. It's a prototype for the spacecraft that Elon Musk plans to use to send humans to the moon and eventually Mars and even beyond. But celebrations were soon dashed after the spaceship exploded minutes after landing. Despite the setback, the billionaire entrepreneur is closer to his dream of launching manned missions to space and further commercialising the final frontier. Liz Maddock reports.
3, 2, 1, ignition. We have liftoff.
They say third time's the charm. SpaceX's Starship rocket had a textbook liftoff.
T plus 30 seconds, Starship 10 has liftoff. It's headed to 10 kilometers on its test flight from Boca Chica in Cameron County, Texas.
The SN-10 reached its planned altitude and was supposed to belly flop and come back down to Earth.
T plus 4 minutes and 40 seconds, Starship has transitioned. It's flipped to the horizontal mode, beginning the descent back to the landing zone.
It came in hot, but managed to stick the pinpoint landing.
It was successful, I would say. The primary thing that, if you remember, there was SN8 and 9, the previous two flights were not able to land properly. And they exploded, they landed hard, it was a hard landing, and so they exploded at that point. Here, the landing was soft, and as it should have been.
But just a few minutes later, it erupted into a $50 million ball of flames.
There you go.
There's your methane leak.
Yes.
There's your...
Folks.
Boo.
SpaceX founder Elon Musk has still hailed it a success. And the $74 billion company will soon have its next generation rocket ready for launch.
So, this is how science and technology progresses. One tiny step at a time, maybe one failure at a time. But you learn a lot from the failure and you go back to the drawing board and then you move forward. And that is exactly what's happening.
SpaceX is one of a handful of private companies competing in the latest space race. Blue Origin, owned by the world's richest man, Jeff Bezos, already has a $500 million US Air Force contract for manned space missions. And Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic says it has $120 million in deposits from potential space tourists. The commercial aerospace industry is expected to generate an astronomical $1 trillion in revenue by 2050. Musk says he expects his craft to reach orbit by the end of the year and conduct regular flights to the Moon and Mars by 2023. It's very ambitious, possibly unlikely. But every fiery crash only reignites his dreams of space travel. Liz Maddock, TRT World.
For more on this, Christopher Conselice joins us now from Manchester. He's a professor of extragalactic astronomy at the University of Manchester. Welcome to the program, Christopher. Now, Starship's explosion has really overshadowed the fact that it managed to not only successfully launch into high altitude, but also successfully land as well back to Earth. Its first upright landing. Can you tell us how significant a milestone that is, not only for Elon Musk and SpaceX, but for space travel more generally?
It's a big success. And the reason is simply because this type of a mission with Starship will allow space to become much more accessible and much cheaper. And so the goal really, and the point of all this, is that space flight will become much cheaper, only a few million for a launch like this to put people in space, or to put satellites into space, or even to transport people around the world, or things around the world from an Earth to Earth shot. So being able to do that and land this rocket after it launches is really important, because it'll reduce the cost of space. And that's really the whole point of this.
And it really is the modus operandi of Elon Musk and SpaceX itself, isn't it? But before we get to that, SpaceX eventually wants Starship to be able to launch cargo and even humans to the Moon and eventually Mars. Can we look at the more attainable destination first, the Moon? What does he have to gain by doing that?
Well, first of all, there are various countries want to have something called the Lunar Gateway, which would be like a a space station going around the moon like we do for the Earth, and that's really one of the first steps, and that's something that SpaceX is very interested in, and so starting that is a good place to go further out into space, and Mars is the ultimate destination of SpaceX, is to go there, and Elon Musk. So that's really the first step, is the moon. So there's not really a practical reason for going to the moon and landing on the moon. There's no natural resources there that are extensively interesting for people to get. But just as a launch pad to go further off in space, it's really the destination to start with.
And let's look at the ultimate destination, as you mentioned, Mars. We know it's always been a pipe dream for Elon Musk to not only reach the red planet, but to eventually help to colonize it at some point. How far away is he from, firstly, just reaching the planet in the first place?
It's probably closer than we'd like to think. I mean, someone like Elon Musk, with his kind of resources and his ability to have things happen, makes it much more likely that it'll happen, say, at least some kind of process to getting towards Mars in the next 10 years or so. And that hasn't really happened in decades. And so we're closer now than we've ever been to having a realistic mission. It's still very far away. It'll still take 6 months, and there's many different problems with things like radiation and just the process of being in a ship for 6 months that have to be solved. And of course, it's very expensive, and so the funding will have to come as well. And that will probably be one of the easier parts. The harder part is really just making it happen in a technical way, and then having humans being able to make that mission possible without with being safe and healthy.
Now, gone are the days, it seems, that it's governments who are engaging in the space race. It looks like it's now the purview of the world's richest men, namely Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. In terms of Elon Musk's competition, Blue Origin, owned by Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, how is that shaping up in terms of competition to Elon Musk's company, SpaceX?
Well, it's certainly not as prominent as SpaceX in terms of the things that it's doing. I would say it's getting close, but it's still behind what SpaceX is doing. But I think that with the resources of Bezos, that it certainly will catch up. And there's lots of talented people working on these problems, and so I suspect that it'll be a strong competitor to SpaceX before too long.
And what about this ultimate dream of colonizing Mars? I mean, for us now, that does seem like a far-fetched idea, but for Elon Musk, not so much. He probably thinks it's attainable within his lifetime. Do you share the same sort of aspirational outlook on the colonization of that planet?
We already have quite a number of human artifacts on Mars. We have, as we've seen just recently, rovers on Mars. There's plenty of them, and they're still active. And so we already have a presence on Mars. So colonizing Mars in a way, say that we, in history, people colonize other places on Earth, probably is still a ways away. But having people visit Mars, maybe having people stay for long periods of time, I think is something certainly possible within the lifetime of Elon Musk or someone of similar age to him, someone that might live another 60 years or so. So I think we will see something like that happening easily, yes.
Okay, Professor Christopher Conselice, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you again for sharing your thoughts with us on Money Talks.